Welcome to Farm's Weekly Wednesday webinar series. I'm glad that you could all join us today because we have a very special and a new presenter, Stephanie Bloomhagen. She's going to talk to us about Cottonwood salve. And then either next week or the week after, she'll be talking to us about edible weeds. And we've got lots of people interested in this topic. So before we turn this over to Stephanie, I just want to let you know that these webinars are underwritten by a grant from the Otto Bremer Foundation with the help of Farms. We will put everybody on mute during the presentation. If you have questions that are pressing and can't wait till the end, please type them in the chat box down here and I will monitor that for Stephanie. And when she pauses, I will interrupt her and we'll get the answer to your question. Otherwise, we'll have time for question and answer after she's through with her presentation. We usually stay within the hour in case somebody has to go back to work. And I would ask that if you get an evaluation after this session to please fill it out because once our funding is over with, we'll need justification to get some more. And this has been an absolutely wonderful series of webinars. They are recorded and they are available on our YouTube channel, usually within an hour or so of the session, unless I have technical difficulties, which that happens sometimes. And I hope we don't have any today because as Stephanie and I were talking earlier, we do have a new interface box. It's changed a little bit and sometimes that means glitches, but we've always managed to get around them one way or the other. So without further ado, we're going to make Stephanie the presenter. When she's ready to show her PowerPoint, we will make sure that you can all see it on the screen, and then she can tell you a little bit more about herself.
Okay. Well, I've got my PowerPoint up, so whenever you want to make me presenter, I'm ready.
Oh dear, I got one of those. Are you getting any kind of requests from the software on your computer right now, like to download?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this
Application.
is one of the little glitches that we run into whenever there's the word web next to your name. You can't be the presenter unless you download it's only 9 megabytes, so it only takes a second. So let's see if we can get
Okay.
that to work. Otherwise, I have plan B.
Okay. It says,
Oops. Super, I can see you. I can see it. I can see it.
wonderful.
All right. Okay, I'm going to mute all the rest of you, and we are going to let Stephanie take it away.
Okay. Well, welcome. I'm so glad you all decided to join this webinar on Cottonwood Bud Balm. I see Ariana and Karen, which is my mother, and Marietta Good, and then Sue, of course. So welcome to all of you. I got interested in Cottonwood Bud Balm when I found some for sale at a farmer's market in Alaska, and I said, well, if she can make Cottonwood Bud Balm, certainly I can. We've got plenty of cottonwood trees in North Dakota. So I tried it for the first time a year ago and had good success, and so I thought I would share what I learned with all of you. I'm assuming you can see my screen and just say something in the chat if you can't. So a quick search on Etsy shows that there are people all over the country making cottonwood bud salve, and a lot of them are selling it on Etsy. So it's not terribly difficult to do. One thing I've learned is that most of the people are in different regions with different species of cottonwood trees. Often they're in the Pacific Northwest using black cottonwood, or balsam poplar, which is a relative, but I think our cottonwoods work just fine. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about cottonwood trees, and when and how to harvest cottonwood buds, and then how to make the salve, which is in two parts. First, you have to make an oil infusion with your buds, and then you turn that infused oil into cottonwood balm. And then I've made a slide with a few resources as well. Um, okay, so using a tree ID book that I stole off my mother's bookshelf, I found that there are a wide variety of cottonwood species. I believe here in North Dakota we typically have plains cottonwoods and probably some eastern cottonwoods that were planted. In other parts of the region, there are black cottonwoods in the Pacific Northwest, balsam poplar, the swamp cottonwood, Palmer cottonwood, Fremont cottonwood. But we know that our cottonwoods are those big towering trees. They have these serrated leaves. They make these buds, which turn to catkins in the spring. And then this is the book I use, just so you know what sources I used. Okay, so collecting the buds. So unfortunately, I mistimed this webinar, and so we're a little bit late for collecting buds this year. The cottonwood trees I've seen, the buds have all opened and released their catkins, and so it's too late to collect buds yet this spring. But this is knowledge you can use next year, and the techniques such as making the oil infusions and making salve are things that you can do with all sorts of plants. It's a very basic technique which translates to lots of medicinal herbs and flowers and things. So here's some images of the buds that I collected. These were collected in March of this year. I wait for the buds to get fat and kind of waxy looking and sticky. You can see that these are starting to ooze some, I don't know, sap or resin. And I don't pick them off the tree because I want those buds to turn into leaves. I wait until after a really windy day or a windstorm and I pick them up off the ground. You should plan to use them as soon as possible after picking them up because they do mold fairly quickly. I've tried to mail them to a friend in Washington and they molded before they reached her. So they won't store very long, so do use them as soon as possible after you pick them up. So here's an image of the twigs after I picked them off the ground. I just went out and collected twigs with nice fat sticky buds on them. And then I started one by one picking all the buds off. And these two images, if we do this right, they should almost be like one of those flip books. So you can, I just one by one snapped all the buds off. The terminal bud at the end of the stem, this one right here, if you can see my cursor, that one's usually a little bit harder to snap off, but the rest of them just snap really easily. So I collected a pile, maybe I probably had 2 to 3 cups by the time I was done. The amount you collect depends really on the amount of salve you want to make, and it really doesn't take that many. A small amount of oil will go a long way. So after I collected them and snapped them off the stems, I chopped them roughly, and then I covered them in oil. So I used a mason jar, and it helps a lot to heat the oil. So I put together just a step-by-step here. And one thing to make sure when you're doing this, they're really sticky, and that sticky sap is really hard to get off. So choose mason jars and knives and cutting boards that you don't mind getting sticky and possibly not being able to clean off again. So I roughly chopped the cottonwood buds and I put them in a mason jar. I heated my oil and I added enough oil to the buds so that they were submerged. It's important that they be underneath the oil because any buds sticking above the surface might mold. So there are different ways of making oil infusions, ranging from cool temperature infusions where you just leave it all at room temperature and leave it sit for a long time, or you can speed the process up by heating the oil and the buds, but you probably don't want to go above around 110 degrees. I warmed the oil and I covered the buds and then I left it sit. And it sits for a long time. Mine sat for 6 weeks. Some people leave their oil infusions for up to 12 months. I covered my jar with a coffee filter, which I held on with the mason jar ring, because there may be some moisture in the buds, and you want that moisture to be able to escape. I'm not sure. Apparently it escapes through the oil, or I had less moisture than I thought because I did not have any mold on mine. But I would not advise sealing the jar completely because there is the potential for mold. But the coffee filter method worked well in allowing moisture to escape and keeping dust out. So you're going to leave your jar with your submerged buds just to sit for weeks to months. And then when you're ready, you'll come back to it and it'll be time to strain off the oil. You'll notice that it'll get darker in color as it sits. It'll turn more golden. When it's ready, the oil has more of a golden color and it smells like cottonwood buds. I think it smells like spring. And then it's time to strain the oil off, which is messy and tricky. I warmed mine up before I strained it. I think I started a kettle of boiling water and put either canning jar rings in the bottom or water bath canner rack or something to keep the jar off the bottom of the pan, and I just heated it in the warm water, much like you do when you're reheating honey. But warming the oil makes it strain off more easily because the oil flows more freely. And then you need to strain it through something to get the buds out. You can use cheesecloth. I didn't personally try cheesecloth because the buds are still kind of sticky and they're going to get all tangled up in the cheesecloth. I used the 3 things pictured. I salvaged a screen from the farm junk heap, and then I had 2 strainers on hand. Be ready to sacrifice the strainer that you use because it'll probably stay stained yellow and kind of sticky. It's really hard to get that resin off. I liked something a little sturdier like the metal screen because I wanted to kind of press on the buds to extract as much oil and resin as possible. A lot of the resin kind of comes out into the oil, but some of the oil also seeps into the buds, and it's nice to be able to get as much of that good resin out as possible. And again, expect a mess. Cover your surface with newspapers if you can. Expect to dribble a little bit of oil here and there, so be prepared for that. And here is my extracted oil. And I forgot to mention, I started with olive oil. So you can see it's taken on more of a golden color from the cottonwood bud resin in the oil. Um, okay, the next step would be making the salve. This seems like a good place to stop for just a second. Are there any questions or comments? Are we all good? Then I will continue on.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to get unmuted, but yes, no questions yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, so once you have your oil, I'm just going to go back to that image of the oil. That oil will keep as long as you put a cover on it. I've had this jar has been in my cupboard for over a year, and well, not over a year, but almost a year, and it's kept just fine. So the next step can wait until you're ready. Um, okay, so to make the salve, you'll need your cottonwood bud infused oil, and then you'll need beeswax to thicken it and stiffen it into a salve. You can also add other ingredients. I add a little bit of cocoa butter to mine. You could add vitamin E. I'm going to try adding lanolin at some point. Um, Basically, the sky's the limit, whatever you can think of. So the ratio of beeswax to oil is important because a little bit of beeswax goes a really long way. I use a 12-to-1 ratio, and I use a kitchen scale to measure because it's pretty hard to get an exact ratio with, with a measuring cup or a tablespoon, although you could certainly try it. Um, so I did 12 parts oil to 1 part beeswax, which came out to about 92 milliliters of oil and 7 milliliters of beeswax. The only reason I measured in milliliters was because that was what my scale was set at, and I forgot to change it before I took the pictures. I use an old pan. You could use a water bath or a double boiler. Make sure your heat stays very low so you don't scorch your oil or your beeswax. I warm my oil. Well, I measure the oil first, and then I warm it, and I measure my beeswax, and then I add the beeswax into the oil, and it should melt fairly quickly. The beeswax will melt down into the oil. This is a good time to add your other ingredients, your cocoa butter if you have it, or vitamin E or anything. And then you'll need to have your tins or your containers ready, and you can start pouring your liquid into your containers. Now, this is not an exact science. You might start with a test container and pour in some of your liquid, put it in the fridge or the freezer to let it firm up. If it's too firm, then you had too much beeswax and you need to add more oil. If it's too soft, you need to add more beeswax. And you can always remelt and add other things. So there's plenty of room to experiment and get the consistency exactly how you want it. So these are my tins. You can see some of them are newly poured and still liquid. Some of them are starting to firm up. Once you've got your consistency the way you want it, fill up all your tins or containers and let them firm up. Don't forget to label it with what is in it and the ingredients and the date you made it. That way you can remember what you did if you want to make some more later. And masking tape or address labels work well if you want to label it. If you really want to make it pretty, Avery makes round sticky back labels that fit on little tins, and you can get templates to print them with designs. Okay, and so here's my ingredients list and supplies list. So this would be helpful to start with. You need to have access to a cottonwood tree, um, organic oil to use for the infusion. I like olive oil. You could use other oils as well. Um, Organic in this case is a good idea because the same properties that extract the good things from the cottonwood buds will also extract chemicals from pesticides used on the crop. So organic is a good idea for this project. You'll need quart-sized mason jars and pint-sized mason jars to hold the buds and the oil. Of course, lids and rings for those jars, and coffee filters. An old pan you don't mind ruining. I have managed to get the oil off of the pan, so just you know keep in mind you might ruin your pan. So screens or strainers, a kitchen scale helps a lot. Beeswax, you can order beeswax on Amazon. Mountainroseherbs.com is a good source for herbs and salve making supplies. They've got little beeswax pellets. Or if you know a local beekeeper, they might be willing to barter or sell you some or even give you some. Newspaper to cover your work service. Anything else you want to add to the salve? We talked about that. Cocoa butter, vitamin E, almond oil. And then tins or reused salve containers to store the finished product. And I've given you the link for Mountain Rose Herbs. They sell a variety of tins and containers. And then here are some links to some other resources. This first is a brief publication. It's a pamphlet, really, about cottonwood trees. It's produced by the North Dakota Forest Service, and it's got all sorts of really interesting information about cottonwoods and the historic cottonwoods in our state near where Lewis and Clark camped. It's got lots of great activities for kids in classrooms. The next two links are websites that have instructions on making cottonwood salve. And then the last, of course, is the link to Mountain Rose Herbs where you can get some supplies. So that is the PowerPoint I created. Does anybody have questions?
I'm working on unmuting everybody.
Okay.
It always takes a little time. I would only like add a couple comments if I could.
Yeah.
Only because I worked at the ag department and they're starting to crack down. Somebody actually posted some sort of a blog post recently about how like Procter and Gamble and Johnson and stuff are trying to prevent people from making things like this, soaps and things like this from home. So I would caution you if you were going to sell this stuff to always use new tins, and B, don't make any scientific claims I'm trying to think of there was a soap maker that had made a soap that was like a mosquito repellent or some kind of thing like that. And unless you have the scientific evidence to back that up, you can't say that. So if you don't make any claims about its properties medicinally, then there shouldn't be any problems selling it. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Ariana, I sure can get you the PowerPoint because Stephanie sent that earlier, and I didn't upload it because I've been having like a crazy week, but trying to get you guys paid for your conference that you were at. So
Yeah. And I didn't really talk about specific healing properties of cottonwood, probably for that reason. I mean, I can't back any of those claims up.
but you can
I
share
have,
it with us anyway, because I am
yeah.
I believe in that kind of stuff. It's just that with all those big corporations out there, they kind of have started watching us a little bit. So,
So most of the websites that I've read, and also this Lewis and Clark Cottonwoods pamphlet, which I would consider a reputable source since it's from the North Dakota State Forest Service, they all mention that cottonwood contains salicin, which has antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties. So um, that means the salve should be helpful for cuts and scrapes and burns. It should promote healing, or even, um, you know, might be soothing for aches and pains. Again, that's I'm not making any claims. um,
hey, we're all cool in this room.
what else was I gonna say? Um, oh, and regardless, it's infused in olive oil and beeswax, so it's going to feel great and make your skin, feel good and soften your skin and moisturize your skin, just by merit of the olive oil and beeswax too. So you can call it a healing salve, or you can just call it a nice moisturizing salve that smells like spring. Um,
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the word, is the word healing sort of like implying something? I've always wondered about that because
I don't know.
packaging is tricky. It's kind of like the with the milk and the non hormone cows and stuff. They had to be like so careful about what they put on their package because if it implies that the other guys are doing something
Right.
different, then it's not acceptable. I'm like, whatever. Like, I would look at it differently than somebody else. But yeah, don't ask.
So I'm curious if anyone participating in the webinar has tried making salve before. Have
Nobody?
you tried? Okay, Marietta hasn't. Have you tried, Sue?
I have. I make gardener's hand cream,
Okay.
and it was mostly coconut oil, beeswax, vitamin E oil. Um, there might have been something else in there too. And I had my way too much beeswax in it because it was a little like lumpy. So I just
Mm-hmm.
reheated it and added more oil to it. So now I have balm or hand lotion to last me for the next 10 years.
Yes.
So be
Yeah, that
warned.
the oil will go a long way. Um, like this little bit in the bottom of the pan in my picture, that filled one, two, three, four, five, six half-ounce tins and this bigger tin, which I think is an ounce. Um, and you just need a little fingerful. It melts right away on your finger as you scoop it out and rub it into your skin. So it goes a long way.
I did go to a class at NPSAS's winter conference where that gal used plankton, which grows wild all over the place. So I would imagine that you could kind of like go out and see what you could find. I'd be tempted to try it with um, coneflower root because that has actually um, anesthesiologic properties. Is that the right
Analgesic?
word?
It makes your mouth numb.
Yes, Novocaine. It's like Novocaine. So can you imagine how good that would feel on your sore shoulders? Yeah, there's plankton grows everywhere around here.
Yeah. And I've seen lots of recipes online for making healing salve with that too. Um, a garden plant which people make salve out of also and cook with is calendula.
Oh yeah,
You
I've
can make
seen that.
calendula oil. Um, the same way you infuse the dried petals in oil, and then you can make salves out of that.
And is that what you would suggest if we were like experimenting? I think I found a dandelion salve that I want to try because we have a lot of those around here too. But is it usually the buds, the leaves, the root? Can you kind of help us out there a little bit?
I've never heard of making salve out of dandelion. I'm more interested in eating dandelion.
Oh, and
Um,
you're going to talk about that segue. When's your next webinar?
I believe it's next week, Wednesday. I will be doing another webinar, this time about eating your weeds. If you can't get the darn things out of your garden, you might as well eat them. And that's, I grew up with my mother serving dandelion salads and cooked uh, cooked lamb's quarters and purslane and nettles. Um, we eat all those things on a regular basis. So I'm going to share some recipes that I've created and found and borrowed, and some tips for identifying and harvesting the edible weeds.
Good. So I won't ask you the question that I'm going to ask you. I'll save it for next week.
Okay,
So
great.
stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, now's your opportunity. Do you have any other questions for Miss Stephanie? I emailed the PowerPoint to you, Ariana, just now. I don't know, if, Marietta, if you want it, I have to go find your email address. I'm assuming your mom can get it from you, Stephanie.
Yes.
No other questions? Nobody has questions? Apparently not. Well, good job. I really enjoyed that. Something a little bit different from our normal kind of farming sort of cooking things that we do because as you know a lot of our small farmers are looking at value added and niche markets, and so this is kind of one of those markets that seems to be becoming more and more popular all the time. What I'd really like to see is somebody do, I'm allergic to a lot of scent. And so when I take a chance and buy some kind of hair product online and I can smell it in the mailbox before I even open it, I know I can't use it because it'll cause me a great deal of angst and anaphylactic shock. And so I'm looking for somebody to do some hair gel, shampoo, something for taming crazy hair. So anybody want to do a webinar on hair care products that are all natural? I'm up for that too.
Well, I would certainly sit in that webinar.
I'm thinking about doing a little experimenting, but as you know, I have way too many projects going on. So, all right. Well, it looks like everybody is satisfied with your marvelous presentation today and looking forward to your next presentation. So, thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to stop recording now and we can go back to our jobs.